Lead. Joining us right now, as promised, to talk to me, to talk to you, to take your phone calls, to do it all, is the man who could do it all, Roger Stone, Republican political consultant, 30-year political advisor and confidant to Donald Trump, and also the author of The Clintons' War on Women. Hello, Roger.
Steve, great to be with you.
Great to talk to you. So where do we want to start? I mean, put the poll aside for a second. Let's talk about some breaking news, which you may or may not be aware of. The AP is reporting that the Clinton Foundation had a little meeting with Bill Clinton today, and he told his top staff that if Hillary wins, they will stop taking donations from corporations and foreign governments. They'll only take donations from U.S. citizens and independent charities. Is this by far enough or no?
Well, first of all, this is akin to closing the barn door after the horse has already escaped. The Clinton Foundation is not a charity. It's a slush fund for grifters. It is a vehicle for the facilitation of multi-million-dollar bribes in return for public policy decisions at the State Department involving defense contracts or policies that certain wealthy interests, be them multinational corporations or wealthy individuals or the oligarchs around Putin, where they can purchase things that are worth millions, if not billions of dollars. So what is amazing to me, Steve, is that the New York Times puts a story on Donald Trump's campaign chairman in which there are no evidence of impropriety, but surrounding his campaign activities in Ukraine, on page 1 above the fold, yet the New York Times and the Washington Post have been presented with egregious evidence of wrongdoing and corruption at the Clinton Foundation since Peter Schweitzer wrote his book, meaning ongoing criminal conspiracies, and they declined to report that. The Clinton Foundation is the Achilles heel of the Clintons, and I think it will be known to the American people prior to this election.
Yeah, you know, just one side note on the reporter who wrote that Times story on Paul Manafort. He basically said, and I'm paraphrasing, but I might even be quoting, when he was asked, he said, anything's possible. Maybe he did something wrong. Maybe he didn't do anything wrong. Maybe it was okay above board. Maybe it wasn't. So to make it seem so nefarious when he's admitting maybe it was nothing is just you know, that's the New York Times.
Yeah, in our business, this is known as a hit job, and in this particular case, we have elevated the story with no evidence. I think we have to point out at this point, Steve, that the owner of the New York Times, at least the largest single shareholder, is also the largest single donor to the Clinton Foundation. That would be the Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Some encouraging polls today. You saw me put up the Rasmussen numbers. Zogby has similar numbers, although there's problems if you look within the polls. Am I correct that Dukakis was up by 17 or so at this point when he was running as well, and maybe Trump supporters shouldn't get too discouraged at all?
There's no reason to be discouraged. I've looked at the swing state polls. I've looked at the national polls. Not only is Donald Trump coming back, but there is no place where he is out of range. Neither one of these candidates, in my opinion, will ever pull out to an insurmountable lead because the electorate is fairly narrowly divided. What's amazing, Steve, is given the mainstream media pile-on, the hysterical coverage of Donald Trump, that he continues to do this well. That tells me that the voters are getting wise to the mainstream media. They understand the link between the corporate-owned media and the political establishment that has run this country into the ditch.
All right, let's talk about what took place yesterday. Some say Paul Manafort was kicked upstairs to more of a figurehead position. Of course, you had the bringing into the campaign of Steve Bannon, who I'm a big fan of. I think he's done great stuff at Breitbart, you know, and with what his role there and elsewhere. And of course, Kellyanne Conway. I think they're great moves. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I share your high regard for Steve Bannon. He's a gut fighter. He is a firebrand. He's a revolutionary. He's had the courage to publish my pieces on the corruption of the Clintons, also Aaron Klein's excellent stories on the Clintons. He understands the Clintons' vulnerabilities perhaps better than anyone in America. Kellyanne Conway was already with the campaign. She now, as I understand it, will be traveling with the traveling party and with the candidate. These are additive. The mainstream media interpretation that this is somehow a demotion for Paul Manafort, that was actually removed from the later editions of the New York Times story because it isn't true. I recognize that the ousted and now disgraced campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, really an advanced man, continues to spin this, but I don't understand why he thinks that is helpful to the campaign.
So you say Lewandowski is putting out the story that his successor, in effect, Manafort, has been demoted.
Well, let's look at this historically. Lewandowski was ousted after Trump lost the Wisconsin primary, the North Dakota caucuses, and the Colorado caucuses. Contests, in all honesty, he should have won. So they got rid of a loser, and they brought somebody who is an adult and who has brought order to the campaign. Now, I see the addition of Bannon as a giant plus because Steve has an understanding of the new media and of the internet media and of millennial voters that the campaign did not have before. Frankly, the Clinton folks are much better at this to date. I think that will now change. So I see this as an expansion of the campaign. I don't think anybody was demoted, and it's not a shakeup because shakeup means that someone lost their job, and no one has lost their job. The team remains intact. Manafort, Fabrizio, Conway, Bannon, this is an all-star lineup. These are winners, and I frankly think Trump's made a great decision by assembling this group.
You know, Richard Viguerie told me yesterday, and we only have 30 seconds in this segment, told me yesterday that he hasn't seen anything like this with the addition of Bannon and Conway in her position since the Reagan 1980 campaign as far as conservatives.
Yeah, I'm very pleased. I think this is additive. It's interesting, Steve. The Clintons have hundreds of staffers. When Donald Trump hires two, you know, it's depicted as a shakeup.
Right?
It's amazing that they can run a presidential campaign with as skeletal a staff as they have had.
Right. All right, stay where you are. Roger will come back. We have more to talk to Roger about, and you are going to talk to Roger at 877 Newsmax, 877-639-7629. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Roger Stone, Republican political consultant, 30-year political advisor and confidant to Donald Trump, and, of course, the author of The Clintons' War on Women, which is soon to be out in paperback. Roger, you know, they're trashing, who's the Trump's attorney, Trump's counsel?
Michael Cohen.
Yeah, Michael Cohen. He did such a great job on CNN yesterday, and they're trashing him because when Breonna Keeler said, "You're so far behind, Trump's way behind," and blah, 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 and he said, "Who said so?" And she said the polls. And he said, "What polls?" So, but today we see Pew. He's 4 down in Pew. As we mentioned, he's 2 down in Rasmussen. He's 2 down in Zogby. So, you know, was he that out of line, being that adamant and stubborn in admitting that, you know, or acquiescing to the fact that Trump is in trouble and accepting the CNN, storyline?
No, actually, I have to rise to the defense of my friend Michael Cohen. In view of the Reuters poll, where Reuters got caught red-handed oversampling Democrats to show Hillary out to a lead, I think many of these polls are flawed. I also, as you know, wrote an extensive piece for The Hill about what I'm concerned about, the rigging of these computerized voting machines.
Yep.
This is a 1-2 punch. First, you jigger the polls to create a perception. Then you use the machines to steal votes. Now, people keep saying to me, "Oh, that can't happen in America. That won't happen." A Princeton professor, a Stanford study, both prove that these machines are readily and easily hacked and rigged. And the stakes in this election are very high. If If you say it can't happen, you're arguing against human nature and the criminal nature of the Clintons, who, let's face it, will do anything for power and wealth.
No, and Department of Homeland Security is working with states to make sure that their voting systems aren't hacked. So they're even taking it seriously.
Well, here's what's interesting, and that is if you look at the Democratic primaries, in at least 12 states, the outcome does not meet the criteria that the State Department under Hillary uses for foreign elections. Poor Bernie got screwed in the machines and through voter fraud. It is the heist of the Democratic nomination, and we would not know this today if it were not for WikiLeaks and Crucifer too. Just to make a point, Steve, the Russians had nothing whatsoever to do with the hacking and release of the documents that prove that the Democratic nomination was stolen. That is a false narrative that was developed by the conspiracy theorist David Brock, who seems to see a conspiracy behind every trade.
Yes, David Brock, Mr. Turncoat, I guess you might call him.
Short, and an exceedingly short individual, by the way.
Well, that I don't know. I've never met him. I'll take your word for it. All right, to the phones. A lot of people want to get in with Roger Stone, 877 Newsmax. Mike is in Waxhaw, North Carolina. I don't know how far that is from Charlotte, Mike, but that's where Donald Trump's about to speak.
Yeah,
how are you, sir?
We're about from downtown Charlotte, about 25 miles.
Oh, not bad, not bad. What can I do for you, sir?
First time caller, and we're having trouble with you on Direct TV.
Well, I'm sorry for that, sir. I'm very sorry. We're now on channel 366, and that's all I could tell you. And call DirecTV, and I'd love to help you more, but that's all I could tell you.
That's fine, but I had a thought the other day that I'd like to share with everybody,
Sure.
and I'd like for them to ask themselves this question before they go in the voting booth, and it's about Hillary Clinton's emails. And my thought was, if her server had never been discovered, what part do you think it'd play in her administration if elected president of the United States?
That's a great question, Roger. If Hillary had never been caught with these emails using the private server, for two questions to you, Roger. What would it have meant for a Clinton administration, and what will it mean? Is she beyond doing it again?
Well, you got a couple issues here. I'm fairly certain that the Russians and the Chinese and the Israelis and the Saudis probably have all of the emails that Huma Abedin, the Saudi asset who's a handler for Hillary, and Cheryl Mills, who's just a stone-cold criminal, thought that they erased. And we don't know that even if U.S.-based sources had never detected her illegal server, we don't know that those entities wouldn't either make them public or use them to blackmail a president of the United States. One of the great misnomers here, of course, is that she was merely careless. As my friend Judge Napolitano has made an excellent point, criminal negligence is all this takes. The laws obviously don't apply to the Clintons. She should have been prosecuted for the various illegalities involved in her illegal and unsecure mail server that left American top secret classified information available to our enemies abroad.
All right, blackmail is a legitimate issue. That's something the media should be talking about. Absolutely. But going forward, if she's president, do you believe that she will once again, go outside the law when it comes to her email and how she uses it and how her people around her use it?
In all honesty, I think if she is elected president, she won't last very long because her criminal nature is such that as soon as she and her husband get their nose back in the trough, the improprieties, the corruption will continue. I also think the country is so bitterly divided, she'll have a very hard time governing. I think you'd have widespread civil disobedience and protest, particularly if there is evidence that this election was either stolen through voter fraud or, far more likely, rigged through machinations with the computerized
All right,
voting machine.
well, let me just ask you, for my own sake, because I know what you don't mean, but there are a couple of options for what you do mean: impeachment, resignation, indictment. So when you say she wouldn't last long, I know what the left is going to say you mean, and you don't mean violence. But when you say, I won't, you tell me you don't mean violence. But when you say she won't last long as president if she's elected, how would she exit that office?
Yeah, no, just to be clear, because you're right, the left likes to distort our views. I'm talking about impeachment or resignation. I'm not talking about violence. I do think you'll have widespread civil disobedience if she is president. You remember how that was during the Vietnam War, Steve? The left said it was a legitimate form of protest. If she is elected, which I think is not going to happen, I think you would have those kind of protests in the country. But to be specific, we're talking about a legal proceeding.
Right, okay.
Impeachment or resignation.
Mike, great question. You led to all that discourse. Thank you very much. Carol is next from Portland, Oregon. Hey, Carol.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Say
Okay, I've got a question. I have a question for Roger. Are you ready for me?
I am. Hit me.
All right. Great to talk to you both.
Thank you. Go ahead. Talk to Roger.
Okay, Roger, it is music to my ears every time I hear you speaking about voter fraud and election theft. And I am so concerned about this. I really would love to see the Trump campaign identify a person to head up the whole thing, to monitor around the country and announce it now. We are looking at this. We are not waiting. It would be too little too late to do exit poll taking or poll watching. Yeah, that's good, but it's just not enough.
How will Donald Trump combat that possibility, Roger?
I can't speak to what the Trump campaign. Let me tell you what I am going to do. I think there's two ways to prevent this. First of all, we need to have a third party inspect all of the software before the elections. And if the Secretary of States or the boards of elections in various states will not allow that, you'll know why. Secondarily, I must respectfully disagree. I am going to organize scientific exit polls in key precincts in key states, and then we can compare the actual results with the exit polls, which have a historically more accurate track record, I might add. So we're going to be able to detect fraud. I'm doing this through a new organization that we're bringing back called Stop the Steal. You'll be able to reach them at stopthesteal.com. I think those two steps are absolutely necessary. Again, inspect the software to make sure it's not rigged, and then secondarily, exit polls scientifically and properly conducted outside the polling places in key precincts, in key cities,
Gotcha.
key localities, in key states.
Thank you very much, Carol. Appreciate it. Roger, we got less than a minute, but let me ask you. I ask you this every time, and I know you're not in the campaign. Will Steve Bannon be one of the guys or the guy who will finally organize and get these commercials on the air, put in them the Benghazi family members, the women who say that Hillary threatened and abused them after they were assaulted or attacked by Bill, blah, 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 blah. Are we finally going to see these issues brought up?
Well, I certainly hope so. Politics ain't beanbag, and this is a contact sport. The Clintons have a sordid record, and in the 80s, they did a very good job of mau-mauing the mainstream media press. In those days, we only had 3 networks.
Right.
It's a whole new day.
All right.
Information can no longer be suppressed, Steve. So yes, I think the answer is yes.
Roger, great to talk to you, sir. Thank you very much. We'll speak to you soon. Up next, Andy McCarthy, former federal prosecutor. We'll get his take on the Clinton Foundation announcement, Hillary's emails, and if I have time, I'll talk to him about the Mets, who are doing very badly, and that's not good for he or for me. We're coming back. Don't go away.